talking about practice, man. I mean, how silly is that?
Pulls up three-pointer. Bang! Bang! It's good! Wins the game at the buzzer!
Hello. Welcome back to the Hoop Junkie podcast, the number one sports podcast in the world.
According to us.
I'm your host, Zach, and I'm joined once again, as always, by the number one sidekick, stat guru himself, Chance Baker. How you doing today, Chance?
Man, it's been a wild day. We thought that we were just gearing up for a crazy deadline, and Kyrie just shook everything up a little early. So I think we should just get right into this one, man. As a Mavs fan, how you feeling today?
Man, so first off, to all of our listeners out there, if you live under a rock like Patrick Starr, let me catch you guys up. So the Brooklyn Nets have made a trade with the Dallas Mavericks that included Kyrie Irving going to Dallas and Spencer Dinwiddie, Dorian Finney-Smith, a 2029 unprotected first-round pick, and 2 second-round picks to the Brooklyn Nets. So, Chance, my first reaction when this whole trade went down was, why did we include any picks?
I think you had to, right? I don't think they would have done the deal without it.
And I see that, but man, there's a world where I think that you look at this Brooklyn Nets team, they still want to compete around Kevin Durant. You look at all the other packages. I think the next best package was probably what the Clippers were going to offer. Would have been Luke Kennard. And I think I saw maybe like Terrence Mann and then like 2 pick swaps in a first. But when you start talking about like if you're trying to win right now, bringing in Dinwiddie to replace Kyrie Irving, I mean, it's obviously not to the level of Kyrie, but that's a solid gap fill. And then you bring in the Nets have struggled defensively this year. You go in and bring in, a top level 3-and-D player. I really don't see too many other trade packages that really could have competed with that as far as like, let's win now. Now, obviously, when you start talking about the draft compensation and all the other stuff, yes, some other packages may have looked a little bit more appealing.
Right. Yeah. I think personally, honestly, I think DFS is one of the most underrated players in the league. And I think that loss could hurt the Mavs a lot. And I think he could be a great asset. Him and Claxton together, just roaming on defense. I think the Nets made a good move here. I think theoretically it could be a win-win for both sides, just as an outsider looking in. I think on Dallas's side, you had to take that risk with Luka, even though he's so young. Typically superstars, you have some time. I think with Luka being this good at this young of an age, like you have to take some risk and go for an all-in move. Kyrie, in theory, if his head's in the game and he's committed as a teammate, he's the perfect guy next to Luka to take that pressure off. There's a lot of ifs and a lot of caveats that come with Kyrie, and you never know. I did read a report, I'm sure you saw this as well shortly before hopping on, that the Mavs haven't guaranteed a contract. They're not telling him like, hey, we'll go ahead and extend you this summer. Like, that's still up in the air. So this could be literally like a 4-month rental. Right. So we'll see how it goes, but I like it for Dallas's perspective. I also like it for Brooklyn. I think that's one of the better offers they could have made as far as like remaining competitive this year. I think Dinwiddie is obviously no Kyrie, but he's serviceable enough to be, that secondary creator. And obviously I love DFS too. And I think both teams could have another move up their sleeve, whether that be the Nets deciding what to do. I haven't seen what KD's reaction is. I'm really curious to see what unfolds from that, but the Nets either going for a rebuild or going for, contending. I think there's still some moves to be made both ways.
Well, we know that Kevin Durant has spoken highly on Dorian in the past. He's talked about him as being a defender, somebody who had to guard him right all the time, and he's spoken highly about him. The Nets organization, they love Spencer Dinwiddie from his past time in Brooklyn. So
that was with Jack Vaughn too, right?
Yeah. And so I think that as far as a fit in Brooklyn, I think they're going to fit seamlessly. And then also by them getting some more draft assets, like the Nets aren't done here with making a move to put quality talent around the Nets. But now back to the Mavericks. Obviously my phone's been blowing up all day because, to a lot of people, I'm their resident Mavericks fan. And so everybody wanted my hot take. And I'm like, hey man, just check into the pod later. So, that's
Nice
the cool
promo.
cool part about having a podcast now is that now you can always just say, hey, wait till the pod. But
Yeah, I'll address all of your concerns live later today for sure.
right. But my immediate reaction was obviously it was about the picks, and then obviously I am a huge Dodo guy. I'm a huge Dorian Finney-Smith guy. But the reality of the situation is, at some point, we've talked about this ad nauseum. At some point, the Mavs had to make some type of risk. At some point, was it going to be now, or was it going to be this offseason when you had your full package of picks to package together to go get another star? I think the Mavs are looking at this from the angle of, hey, we've got Nico Harrison here, the ex head guy at Nike, who's already has a relationship with Kyrie Irving. We've got Jason Kidd here. Jason Kidd already has a relationship with Kyrie Irving as Kyrie has used Jason Kidd's same trainer. He grew up in New Jersey at the time when Kidd was playing for the Nets. Kidd was always Kyrie's favorite player growing up, so he has a lot of influence with him. The interesting part here to watch is Mark Cuban. Mark Cuban has been known for very pro-vaccine and and he comes from a Jewish background. So, that's going to be that's something I'm watching because I don't think a lot of people have said that yet. But that's something that I'm definitely keeping my eye on is how everything handles with Cuban. But I think Nico probably went to Cuban and was like, look, man, this is our chance to go get a player that we can put next to Luka and compete right now. Because now you sit here and you talk about if the Mavs can hold on to Christian Wood this year, and then you have Kyrie Irving, this second half of the season for the Mavericks can be explosive offensively. Between those three. I mean, because if you look at it, Luka Doncic is the number one double team player in the league, like by far. It's like him, then it's Giannis, and then it just goes down the list. But like Luka's catching double teams every night, doubles, triple teams. But there's no way you can do that with Kyrie Irving being on the other side of the backcourt.
Right.
So that's interesting. Now, my next thing is the Mavs, what they have to do is they have to figure out their rebounding and their defense from here. The Mavs have struggled this year rebounding the basketball, and the Mavs have not been a great defensive team. The Mavs have done the same thing that all Jason Kidd teams have done, where they start off Jason Kidd's first year as a top 10 defense, and then after that they fall off the second year. The Mavs, I believe, when I last checked, were like 28th or 30th, somewhere around there. On defense.
On cleaning the glass, they're the 8th best offense, 23rd best defense on cleaning the glass. That takes out garbage time, so it can be a little different sometimes from other sites, but definitely a bottom tier defense, and that's before giving up DFS for Kyrie. So I share the same concerns. I think a trio of Kyrie, Luka, and Christian Wood, if they're playing the majority of their minutes on the court together, they're going to need some help defensively. So that's why I'm wondering, do you think there could be another move on the table for like a Matisse Thybulle, maybe even a Jay Crowder, some other like point of attack wing defender? Because I think that's the missing piece. And I think if you're going to go all in on Kyrie, especially being it might be a short-term rental, should they go all in even further and go, make another move and get a wing defender? Because I think that's the next move if you're really wanting to be serious about contending this year. I think you still need a wing defender for sure.
Yeah. So the people that I'm kind of keeping an eye on to help this team, or can the Mavs make a move for someone like a Matisse Thybulle, or can they make a move for Jay Crowder, but also someone like even like a Jared Vanderbilt? We've heard
he'd be perfect.
Yep. Yeah. With him, play him and Christian Wood as your two bigs. I think that they would really complement each other well.
Doesn't need the ball in his hands. Yeah.
And so the Mavs, they've got 2 picks to trade right now, right? Where they could renounce the rights to that draft pick this year. Just go ahead and give it to the Knicks. Excuse me. Go ahead and give it to them. And then they still got 2 other picks that they can play with. At this point, if you're going to make this all-in risky move, you might as well go all in and go for it, and just see what happens. Because at the end of this season, you're going to have Christian Wood as a free agent, and then you're going to have Kyrie Irving as a free agent. Cool part about it is if it doesn't work out with Kyrie, then you got the cap space to go in and go try to sign somebody else to put next to Luka. I get it. It's a high risk move, but with just due to the other moves the Mavs have made in the past, like they had no choice but to make a move like this at some point.
Yeah, and I mean, Mark Cuban has shown that like he will aggressively go for that second star with Luka, whether it works out or not. Like the Kristaps Porzingis trade, like obviously it didn't work out in hindsight, but at the time that was a very aggressive, like go get him now move. Obviously now you guys are facing the repercussions of that with the draft picks, and that kind of like limited the assets that you have currently. But he's shown in the past like he understands what he has with Luka, and you have to go all out. And to do that, you're going to have to take risk, right? Like it's not very often that superstars just hit the market. So when someone like Kyrie comes along with all the talent that he has, yeah, there's a lot, and I mean a lot of baggage that comes with that. But that is the most talented player that's going to be available that you can realistically get. So you have to do what you can do to surround Luka with other talent. And yeah, I think offensively, Dallas will definitely have a top 5 offense throughout the rest of the season. Like you said, they can't double anymore because Kyrie, not only is he a great spot up shooter, but his point of attack, attacking closeouts, they're just not going to be able to do that. I think Christian Wood benefits greatly on the offensive end too. I think he'll get so many good looks both around the basket and spotting up. So yeah, the offense will be fun to watch. I'm not too concerned with the on the court fit offensively. My biggest thing is defensively, and Kyrie's just a ticking time bomb. We've said, and I've always said this before about the Nets, that they're looking great, but Kyrie, you just never know what could happen. I said before that the stuff that he had at the beginning of the year with the documentary and all that wasn't going to be the last we heard of Kyrie. We knew that there was going to be something else. We all said that at the beginning, like this is happening in November. There's going to be more that happens with Kyrie. And I wonder that now, is there going to be more that happens with him, throughout the next couple months, or is he going to just put his head down and be ready to play and work towards that contract? Because he does clearly show that he is still motivated by money, even though we've questioned that in the past in some of his decisions. He definitely still wants that bag. So maybe that'll be enough to keep him motivated to at least secure that contract before he goes off the rails again. We'll see, but it'll be interesting. I'm curious to see what the Mavs do from here, if they stay aggressive and go for another move, or how it works out.
Well, the players that are on my watch list for Dallas I'm looking at the last bit of draft compensation that the Mavs had, but then also they've got 2 big contracts in Tim Hardaway Jr. and Davis Bertans. There's actually, believe it or not, there are a couple teams out there that could use someone like a Tim Hardaway Jr. and even a Davis Bertans. The only issue with Davis is that his production and his contract just don't match up at all.
Oh yeah,
from that contract he got with the Wizards. However, depending on what the Lakers are looking to do and trying to do, I honestly could see both of those guys filling out extra roster spots for the Lakers, or other teams that just need more shooters, more shooting depth. So it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see what the Mavs do with them. And then the other person I'm watching is JaVale McGee. He hasn't worked out in Dallas so far. I don't know if it's Jason Kidd's system that he's not able to play in, or is JaVale McGee past his time. So, all that remains to be seen. But those are kind of the names I'm expecting to be moved before the deadline if the opportunity presents itself. Because with having Kyrie and Luka in your backcourt, you've got enough offense coming from your backcourt to where Tim Hardaway at this point is not necessarily what you need. I would like to see them maybe flip him to get a true third string point guard. Maybe you can pry someone like a Mike Conley away from Utah, somebody just to come off the bench and give solid point guard minutes to back up Kyrie and Luka. So that way they can get back into, what made the Mavs so good after they traded Kristaps Porzingis was when they brought in Dinwiddie, and then they added him to having Jalen Brunson and Luka. Now you had 3 creators at all times.
You could stagger their minutes. You always have a creator on the court
at all times. And so now you can go get that third guard, and then you can add them with Christian Wood. I mean, from offense, this offense has 0 holes in it. My question, Chance, does this give the Mavs probably the best backcourt in the league between having Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving?
Definitely has to be up there. Yeah. I mean, when you look at, Steph and Clay were historically the best backcourt of the past decade. I think with Clay's, dropping down a little bit, I wouldn't put them up there now. I mean, you look at the other competitors like John Bain. I don't think they're on,
Mm-hmm.
Luke and Kyrie's level, especially offensively. Garland and Mitchell are up there as well. But yeah, I think they've got to have perhaps the best backcourt in the league, especially offensively. Biggest
Mm-hmm.
thing is going to be that defensive side. So we'll see if they make another move to address that side of things. But
Yeah.
they'll be fun to watch. I do think, as of the current roster, I do think the ceiling is still limited because of the defense. Like, I
Yep.
could see Dallas making another run. I don't know if they can beat a team like the Nuggets in a full 7-game series that has
Mm-hmm.
the offensive firepower that they do, or even a Warriors if healthy, and especially not one of those Eastern Conference teams with the firepower that they have. But
Yep.
I think now they're possibly one or two more smaller moves away from actually being in that position where you could say, yeah, they could come out of the West and we wouldn't be surprised.
Right. So now, to all of our listeners out there, comment below what you guys think about the trade. I'm really interested to hear if you guys think this was a good move for the Mavs, good move for the Nets, or who you're excited to see how this turns out. Now, Chance. So on the other side of this coin, so anytime deals are made, there's always teams that end up getting left in the dust. And if you were on Twitter today, you saw King James send out another epic tweet today.
Oh, yeah. He's always good for him.
Yeah. So I don't even have the, oh, God, I got people racing outside. I got, so let me pull up the tweet. So LeBron.
It was very simple. He just said, maybe it's me. That was his tweet. Tweeted that randomly at 6:38 p.m. So I guess that was about 4:30 Pacific time. So I think LeBron is just sitting there reading the news. He's probably got Drake on in the background listening to Marvin's Room, telling Kyrie he's just saying he could do better if he went to LA. And LeBron is just he's sulking right now, man. He wanted his friend back. He wanted to get that third star in LA, and he just couldn't help himself. He had to send the dramatic tweet. He couldn't hold back. So he just said, maybe it's me. And so that'll be the talk of the week as well.
You got to think, though, from a Lakers perspective, like this has to be a little bit demoralizing, right? Because you got a team in the Western Conference, get Kyrie, that you're essentially battling for playoff positioning. And then this was probably your last ditch move to get major talent to compete this year.
I think when you look at the deadline, that's the biggest name that was going to be available by far that they could realistically get, especially like that was the one move that could have salvaged their season, and it went away from them. So
yeah. So I'm interested to see like what the Lakers do now at this point. Like, are you still gonna make a big push to get rid of Russ? Or do you just say, you know what, let's just hold on to him? Because you had Miles Turner re-signed with the Pacers. I don't see them trading him, but I mean, who knows? I never thought that Mark Cuban would sign off on a Kyrie Irving trade either.
Right. Right.
So you never know. Do you have any expectations for the Lakers going into the trade deadline?
Personally, I don't. I think this was their last big splash they could have made. I think there's a couple, smaller moves. There's a lot of those like mid-level players that are, potentially available, like a Alec Burks, Malik Beasley, like some of those like, spark plug wing guys, but no one available left that the Lakers could realistically get, I think could make a difference on their season this year. Kyrie, I think could have. I think you get Kyrie next to a healthy AD and LeBron, that could be a contender in the West. I don't see any other moves. Obviously, things can change so quickly. 2 days ago, no one expected Kyrie to be on the trading block and then dealt within the next 24 hours. So obviously, a lot of things could change. As of now, if I'm LA, I would kind of stick to just playing the season out. You get through the summer, you get off Westbrook's contract, you get another pick that you can trade because then you finish the pick swap with the Pelicans and you get another asset. So then you could trade 3 first-round picks as opposed to 2. You can make another move in the summer to go all in. I think you have a lot more flexibility if you just wait it out to the end of the summer. Let LeBron get the record that's coming within the next game or two. I think he's 36 points away. Let him get that, celebrate that, and just fight for the play-in. I just don't see a move that's worth mortgaging your future for when you're not going to really like take the next step up either way. Like I don't see somebody out there. Miles Turner potentially would have been that guy, but it does look like they're going to keep him in Indiana now. And I'm not really sure what else they could do at this point other than wait. But we'll see. LeBron is going to keep tweeting until they trade for somebody. So we'll see what happens.
Well, you know him. You know he says "F them picks." So,
Yep.
all right. Well, so now we've got this big trade in the West. It seems like now trade season has kicked off. Now, like whenever you get trades like this, usually I wouldn't be surprised if over the next few days we start seeing other ones just start rattling off. Just because that's usually how this stuff goes. Now, with the West, and how do you think the rest of the West is going to handle this, and especially even with the big news that came out this weekend that Steph Curry is expected to miss considerable amount of time?
Yeah, I think teams are going to be aggressive in the West because the West is so wide open this year, more than I can remember, especially when you look back at how the Warriors just dominated basically the last decade out West. And it was pretty much a guarantee, especially during the Durant years. Like every single year, they're going to be the title and you're just fighting for a puncher's chance to knock them off. Whereas this year, it is so much parity. So I think a lot of teams in the West could get really aggressive. I could see even a team like Sacramento. Like who would have thought they'd be in a position to make a win now move and go for somebody that could really put them over the edge. There's a lot of, chatter going around here in Memphis. The Grizzlies are struggling pretty heavily right now. Lost like 8 out of their last 9 games after that winning streak. And a lot of people are kind of getting uneasy, ready for the Grizzlies to make a move for, maybe like an OG Siakam, someone like that to really take them over the top as well. The Clippers and Suns, you've heard their names a lot within the Kyrie, sweepstakes. I heard the rumor that the Suns are going to try to pry KD away from the Nets now that, that could be a situation that's coming up. We'll see how realistic that is. But any team like that, Clippers, Suns, Kings, Grizzlies, I think the Nuggets might make a small Bones Highland related move to shore up their bench a little bit. But I think the West is going to be extremely active. I'm still not sold on how many like difference makers are going to be available. I think there's 3 times as many buyers as there are sellers. So we'll see like what the actual outcome is. But I do think the West is going to be more active than ever to try to shore up and take them over the edge, because right now the West is up for grabs for anybody. Denver has a pretty sizable lead as far as like being the 1 seed, but they have their own question marks on the defensive end and with their bench as well. There's no team that looks far and above everyone like it does in the East. So
Right.
I think it'll be pretty active out West. What are your thoughts?
Man, I think the same thing, but I think the biggest thing, Chance, that my eyes are on are going to be how do the Warriors respond with Kyrie? I mean, with Steph missing a considerable amount of time. Man, you saw they made it through. The team started actually picking up their play in Steph's absence recently, and then he came back, and it seemed like, okay, now we're finally going to start putting the pieces together and start playing Warriors basketball again. And then now, he tweaks his leg again.
Dude,
Saturday
he has so many
Dallas.
injuries in that leg. Like I couldn't even like comprehend some of the stuff that came out in that report with some of the injuries that he had. It does not sound good. It sounds like he's out for at least a few weeks at the minimum.
Oh yeah, the way that report looked, dude, I'm expecting at least a month. Like
like 4 to 6 at least.
Yeah, and so I'm really curious to see how they're going to respond to, and then what do they do at the trade deadline, or do they freak out and make a move, because they've already sat there and they contemplated, okay, what moves do we need to make around the fringes of our core to be better, even at the beginning of the year. So now I don't know which way they pivot. That I don't even have a take for that. You know what I mean? That's
right.
If you're Bob Myers right now, man, you've got a hot seat right now. I mean, theoretically, he's not going to get fired, but he's got to be, having a few whiskey nights out there.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, you've got to ask yourself, how many years does this core have left with Steph, Clay, Draymond? Obviously, Jordan Poole's coming up on the younger side of things, but with that big 3, their core, how long do they have left? Draymond obviously has his player option for 1 more year. He could be a free agent coming up, and that's been a lot of talk about if he's going to get his new contract as well. And so, yeah, with this Steph injury, now they have to decide, are they going to make another aggressive move and try to retool for when Steph is back to push for that title again? Because, again, the West is wide open. It could be a situation where as long as Steph is healthy and ready to go by April, they're going to have just as good of a chance as anybody out West. So can they make 1 or 2 more moves to really shore things up for him to get back and for them to have a chance as well? I'll be curious to see how they play it out as well.
Okay, so Chance. So now that we finally have all of the All-Stars, right? So the All-Star starters, I'm gonna go through and name those guys off first, and then we'll go down to the All-Star reserves. So the two team captains are LeBron James and Giannis Antetokounmpo. And then the rest of the starters, you have Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, Kyrie Irving, Luka Doncic, Donovan Mitchell, Nikola Jokic, Jason Tatum, and Zion Williamson. Did you have any surprise out of any of those guys being named as starters?
Not as starters. The only big thing for me is it kind of blows my mind that Joel Embiid is not a starter. I think he could be. It doesn't look like KD will be back for the All-Star game, so he'll probably get lifted up there. Same thing with the West. There's a couple injuries with, obviously Steph. I don't expect to play, so I would assume Ja probably takes that starting spot,
Right.
and Zion likely won't play either. But the only one I could say is a little shocking is Zion because of games played out West. But when you look at the West, basically all the forwards out there have missed a ton of time. So there's no obvious person like out East. Joel Embiid was like an obvious person. There was just, one less spot in the East. Yeah, nothing too shocking besides that.
Yeah, I can't, man. I really couldn't complain too much about Zion starting because when you go down and you look at the list of the rest of the forwards, I mean, all of them missed time. I mean,
right.
You could say, I guess Lowry probably hasn't missed a whole bunch of time, but All-Star starter is a bit of a reach. I wouldn't be mad. I wouldn't have been mad at seeing our good light the beam guy Sabonis starting, just because of the story of the Kings. But really, I mean, it's kind of hard to argue somebody got snubbed a starting spot because it's just not really a clear cut guy that you would just say, oh yeah, he deserved to be a starter.
Yeah, agreed for sure.
Now, and so when you look at the reserves, Chance, we've got in the East, we've got Bam, Jaylen Brown, DeMar DeRozan, Embiid, Tyrese Halliburton, Drew Holiday, and Julius Randle, all coming out of the East. Did you have any East reserves that you thought that maybe they got snubbed?
Gotta be Jalen Brunson is the big one. I thought he was a lock to be an all-star. Like when I was coming through, putting my predictions together, I just pretty much had Jalen Brunson penciled in as an automatic all-star. Yep. Him and James Harden too. I think Harden, people are really sleeping on how great of a season he's having as far as his playmaking goes, leading the Sixers to one of the best records out East. And not to say that any of the reserves out East didn't deserve it, but when you look at guys like Drew Holiday, who I think is amazing, and clearly it seems like the coaches really value defense a lot based on some of their selections. So I don't think that Drew is not deserving because he's a menace on that side of the floor, but I don't see how you don't have Jalen Brunson in this initial lineup. So
yeah, I was upset about that one, man. I was upset about Jalen Brunson, and believe it or not, I really believe that Pascal Siakam should be in this game too.
Agreed too. So I definitely think so too.
Yeah, I think if you look at especially how Siakam started off the season, I know he missed some time with injuries, but man, like there was times where we were sitting there talking about, is Siakam the MVP this year? I mean, just based off his play. I understand his team hasn't been performing that well, but man, he's put up some great games, and I mean, if I had to take two people off of the East, I would probably slide Drew and Julius Randle potentially for Brunson and Siakam. But at the end of the day, all these guys are deserving. And you really, I think a lot of this shows is just how much talent is in the league now. I remember some All-Star games, you're sitting, wasn't Andre Drummond an All-Star one year?
I think he might have been.
Yeah.
And I think, honestly, man, when you talk about how much talent is in the NBA, and you also look at the fact that the rosters have expanded, basically every team has 17 spots now, including the two-way guys. I think we're at a point where we have to expand the All-Star rosters to 15 on each side. You could really even argue, because they do captains now, there's really not even a big need for conferences. I think the best solution to this is just make it 30 All-Stars total, the 30 most deserving people. You don't even have to fool with injury replacement. So if there's, guys that are out, you don't have to worry about replacing them because you'll still have 12 or 13 guys on each side. I think the All-Star should be shifted to 15 guys on each side, because if you look on both conferences, I know we haven't gotten to the Western Reserves yet, but there were at least 2 or 3 guys on each conference that were just as deserving. And 30 players is still such a small percentage of the league. It's not like it would be like an inflated amount. I think that we're at a position where we need to expand it, because there's too many guys that are left out. Jalen Brunson should not be relying on an injury to get, into the All-Star game.
Yeah, and I agree with you, Chance. Only tweak I would have, I don't think you could just do 30, a blanket 30 across both conferences. I think you still have to do it by conference, just because of games played, and then also you need the representation from both conferences. So that way it gives as many teams as possible opportunities to have representation, right? That's kind of the whole thing, All-Star Weekend, because you could end up having some years where, like, there were a lot of years where all the dogs were in the Western Conference, and you may have,
See, to
in
my
those
point
years,
on
you
that,
may have only had 10 All-Stars from the East,
my thoughts on that are, if there's 20 guys in the West that really deserve it, I say give it to the guys that most deserve it. I don't think, like, when you look at a guy like Mike Conley, who did finally get his All-Star nod later, a couple years ago, but I think there were multiple seasons he could have been an All-Star if he played in the East, but because he played in the stacked West, he was behind guys like Chris Paul, James Harden, and so he never got a chance to make it. I think even with that, I think that it could still be 30, because that would give guys more of an opportunity where they're not limited just because they're in a tougher conference. I could see it going either way. Like, I wouldn't be upset at all if they just made it 15 from each conference, but I do think they need to expand it one way or another, because there's too many guys deserving that are not getting that opportunity. And we could segue into the Western All-Stars, because I've got some thoughts on that one too.
So in the West, we've got Paul George, Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, Jaren Jackson Jr., Dame Dollar, Lauri Markkanen, Ja Morant, and Domantas Sabonis. So who do you think got snubbed in the West?
De'Aaron Fox might be the biggest snub. Between him and Brunson, it's tough to decide, but this guy literally is having a career year, leading the Kings to the 3 seed out West. And this guy's not an All-Star. He 100% should have been in. If you look at who he should have replaced, I hate to do that, because I feel like everybody on the list deserves it. That's why I'm more team expanded as opposed to team replace one of these guys. But I would say Paul George, he didn't play a ton either. He was great when he played, but I would put De'Aaron Fox probably over Paul George. Here in Memphis, like, we weren't even expecting to get Jaren Jackson in. I do think he's very deserving, and I wouldn't replace him. But, if you go, it's hard, because you've got guys like Zion and Jaren that got in despite, only playing like 800 minutes so far on the season, when other guys played a lot more. And then other guys, you say they didn't get in because of minutes. So I think, it's really hard to decide like what they're actually determining. But De'Aaron Fox 100% should have been in. Anthony Edwards too. He didn't miss a single game all season.
Yeah, well, I don't think De'Aaron Fox could have replaced George because of the position.
I think if it's a wild card, you could do it that way, right? Because there's 2 wild cards on each side.
So I don't know how that voting came down on that, but yeah, that might have been the potential holdup. But yeah, I mean, Fox has those Kings playing well. I mean, and, he's the point guard of that ship, and he's running things, and then him and Sabonis, that 2-man action game that they got between the two of them is money, man. And so I mean, I'm with you. I think Fox should start. I mean, but at the end of the day, I mean, Fox or Edwards is going to get a chance to play in this game anyway. So
I think likely both of them. I think between Steph and Zion, I don't see either of. Obviously, Steph is pretty much out for the All-Star game. I don't see Zion coming back either. So I think Fox and would Edwards be your next one after Fox also, or is there anybody else out west that we should consider?
Yeah, I don't have any other hot take for you on those guys. I mean, I think those two are the clear-cut guys. And if you look at Anthony Edwards, as with Cat being out, has really taken the lead over that team of Minnesota, and he's got Minnesota right there in the hunt, just like with everybody else in the West. So yeah, I think
it's funny they asked Edwards about not making it, and he, Edwards is just so, charismatic and personal. Right. He was just like, man, honestly, like, I didn't expect to. He was like, I started off the season slow. Like, I sucked at the beginning of the year. He was like, I just can't believe Fox didn't make it. He was like, he 100% should have made it. And I thought that was cool of him. Clearly those guys respect each other a lot. Yeah. I'd love to see them both be able to get the nod. If there's 2 replacements, I think it should go to them. Anthony Davis definitely has a case too. I mean, if you look at, he played more minutes than Jaren so far this season, although it was
Mhm.
less games. He did play more minutes. So if that's your argument, he could easily get into. I do think the consensus seems to be it'll be Fox and likely Edwards, and they both deserve it. Hopefully they can both get in and get out there as well. But
Mhm.
yeah, again, going back to my point, there was 15 guys from each side that definitely could have made it and were
Man, I
deserving.
mean,
So I think that could have solved some headache too.
you look at it, man. Like you said, as soon as you put Fox and Edwards in this game, now on the West, dude, it's exciting. You got a lot of young all stars now. Uh,
You do, yeah.
like if you go down and you start talking about them too. You start talking about Zion. You go down to Shea as a first time, Jaren a first time. Ja was this his second time. Lowry first
Marketing's
time.
first time.
And
Yep.
Sabonis is 3 times in the East with the Pacers. But man, it's exciting stuff with all these young cats in the All Star game. All right, Chance.
100%.
So going into the week, we got the trade deadline coming up on Thursday. And yes, to all listeners out there, we will be making a pod after the trade deadline wraps up. So make sure you guys tune in Thursday night to hear our reactions on all the trades that either happen or don't happen. We'll still be here. And
Yep.
so what are you anticipating happening? You got any big moves you're watching out for? Any teams you're watching out for? Players? What's kind of going through your head right now?
Honestly, the number one team that I think is really going to determine this deadline is the Toronto Raptors. We just saw them beat the Grizzlies right before recording this, and it still blows my mind how these guys are struggling because they have so many talented guys. But I think when you look at the amount of guys on their team that you hear in rumors between OG, they're saying Pascal Siakam, they're taking some calls on Fred VanVleet, Gary Trent. There's so many valuable pieces on their roster that I think if they are going all out for the sell, that's going to basically be the spark plug that initiates this deadline. Whereas if they decide they're going to stand put, I think that could slow everything else down as well. There's a lot of, mid-level role players, guys like Malik Beasley, Alec Burks, who I talked about before, guys like that who I think could be great, like additions to a team's bench that needs a spark plug. But as far as like start worthy, upgradable players, I think the Raptors have a lot to offer. And I think they're going to be the ones that ignite what happens the rest of the week. So that's a team I'm keeping my eye on for sure.
Yeah, I'm actually keeping my eye on 2 teams. I'm keeping my eye on the Phoenix Suns and the Los Angeles Clippers. So the Los Angeles Clippers have not been happy with their point guard play. That's why they were mentioned and looking for a Kyrie Irving. Same thing with the Suns too. They haven't been pleased with Chris Paul. They think he's declining. Which I mean, if you got two,
he was
eyeballs,
like 0 for 7 the other night. Yeah, I think it's safe to say he's declining.
Yeah, you got 2 eyeballs. You can see it, right? And so as with the Clippers, man, like they've always been pretty aggressive in the past. They've been reluctant to get rid of some of their younger guys like Terrence Mann. But it seems like now, that conversation is coming out. Like, are they ready to move on for him to upgrade from Reggie Jackson or upgrade from John Wall? I even saw them potentially talking about if they can't trade John Wall, they might just cut him outright. Which is really interesting to see where John Wall goes. But then with the Suns got a new owner coming in. Like, what does he want to do with this team? All intentions have led up to saying that he wants to win and he wants to win now. So it's not like he's ready to blow things up. But the Suns have been on a big losing skid. Have lost a lot of games in Devin Booker's absence. He's supposed to be coming back here soon. But, who knows if he'll be able to salvage that season for him all by himself. So those are the 2 teams I'm kind of keeping my eye on.
Yeah, I think a guy like Mike Conley could be perfect for either of those teams that need some point guard help. So that leads me to, the Jazz, very similar to Toronto, a team that's kind of like middling in the play-in, a lot of good pieces that are actually worthy of being valuable pieces. You talked about Jared Vanderbilt earlier, Malik Beasley, maybe even Jordan Clarkson. There's a lot of guys on that team as well. Those are the kind of guys that I expect a team like Phoenix or LA to go after. So we'll see. It's going to be very interesting. I'm really hoping we have as many fireworks as possible to go over when we reconnect again later in the week.
All right, everybody. Thank y'all for tuning in once again to this week's pod, or I don't even know if I'm saying this week's pod, man. We just hopped on today. Thank you guys.
We've got to a point where we're just like, hey, there's some news. Let's jump on here and cover it real quick.
Yeah.
I don't even know how many we've done in the past week.
Oh, I don't even know, man. But it's been a lot of stuff going on. And as long as stuff keeps going on, you know we're gonna hop on here and talk about it. So, but anyways, listeners, thank y'all for tuning in once again to the Hoop Junkie podcast. Hey, why don't you guys comment below what you are expecting to see at this trade deadline? All right, until next week or until Thursday, we'll holla at you.